Hello, welcome to the Intentional Homeschooling Podcast. I'm your host, Chantel, and I am a homeschool mom and a lover of middle grade books myself, hence today's episode. So in March, there is this readathon over on YouTube, on BookTube, that is called Middle Grade March. That is just to inspire people to read more middle grade books throughout the month. I will leave the information in the show notes with the hosts who are hosting Middle Grade March. They have a group read, they have different prompts, but they always just say if you even read one middle grade book in the month, you have participated in the readathon, and I am excited to share all the books, not all the books actually, all the books I currently have in front of me that I really would like to get to in March. I won't get to this many, but I have a lot of books I want to get to. I have realized over the years that I enjoy middle grade, but I feel like there's a couple different kinds of middle grade books. There are middle grade books that feel like they were written for adults. There are middle grade books that feel like they were just written for middle grade kids. And then there's that sweet spot where you can find middle grade books that everyone seems to enjoy. And so those are my favorite because then I can read them and enjoy them and I can pass them on to my kids. If you guys need actual middle grade recommendations, last week on my BookTube channel, I shared the best middle grade books that I've read in the last year, and I've done that for the last few years, so I have links for all of those videos that you can go back and watch. I will also leave those in the show notes, and I will leave all the books I talk about today in the show notes. So don't worry about like jotting things down really quickly, but the first thing we need to do is start with the book from the vault. So a book from the vault is one I haven't talked about in a while that I want to highlight, and with it being Middle Grade March and this being like a middle grade themed book list, it seemed like a good idea to share a middle grade book from the vault, and the one I'm going to share today is Alone. So this is actually kind of a survival story, which are not my favorite kinds of books, but it is kind of dystopian-esque because our main character, she is told her parents she's going to her friend's house for a sleepover. She goes to her grandparents' cabin and her friend are supposed to have a sleepover there, but while she's waiting for her friend, she falls asleep. She wakes up the next morning and the whole town is gone, and she needs to learn how to survive on her own in this town, and she comes across a dog, and this is her story. And it is written in verse, which I do have a soft spot for books written in verse. So it's a quick read, and I really enjoyed it, seeing how she survived. Like I said, the whole survival story is not my kind of thing, but like kind of like the post-apocalyptic type of book I find very fascinating, and this is definitely one that I would recommend. If today's book recommendations are not enough for you, if you want even more recommendations, I would suggest you sign up for my homeschool newsletter. That will also be linked in the show notes. I send it out about every week. Every now and then I miss a week, and I always share what my 9-year-old's reading, what my 12-year-old's reading, and a book that I'm reading. Usually we're reading a few books at a time, but I'll pick one and share them. Sometimes we're not far enough to like say if it's good or bad, but it should give you lots more book ideas, books to check out. So if you're interested in even more book recommendations, please sign up for that. Okay, now we will get into all the books I have in front of me that I want to potentially read in March. So like I said, March is Middle Grade March, and my idea is to create a regular TBR, a to be read list of books like I normally do, which this year I'm trying to keep it to maximum 7 books. And then in between reading my regular books, I'm hoping to read at least one middle grade book. And maybe some of these will end up on my official TBR, but I'm gonna try to use these as palate cleansers because they're usually quick and they're just easier reads, and I may do some of these on audio as well. So the first one I want to share is Rover's Story, because this is the group read for this year, and this is one that's been on my radar for a while. This is a science fiction book about a Mars rover named Resilience, or Res, and I don't really know anything more than that, but I've really come to love science fiction in the last few years, and I've read some really good middle grade science fiction, so I have high expectations for this. I hope it lives up to it. The only other book that I currently have out from the library on this stack, although I do have more requested of course, is Otter by Catherine Applegate. And first of all, I have always been a lover of otters. I think they're so cute. But this is Otter as in Odder, and it is also written in verse. So this one will be a quick read. And I have loved Catherine Applegate's, a couple of her other books. Crenshaw, The One and Only Ivan, Home of the Brave. Like, she's written some really good books. And I can't believe I haven't read this one yet because I've gotten it out from the library multiple times. It says here, meet Otter, the queen of play. Nobody has her moves. She doesn't just swim to the bottom, she dive bombs. She doesn't just somersault, she triple donuts. She doesn't just ride the waves, she makes them. And so I really don't know anything about the book other than the cover's adorable and it's about an otter. So I'm gonna go kind of into this blind and I'm excited for it. If you haven't followed my booktube channel in the past, you might not know that I generally don't like to know much going into my books. So a lot of these I don't know a lot about. I like the unraveling of stories and being surprised. So I'm not going to share a whole lot about the book because I generally just don't know. Another one on my list here is Paper Wishes. I think I need to make like a stack of like the highest priority ones because this one would definitely be on there. This is about a girl who is a Japanese American and she goes to an internment camp. We're set in 1942. So this is kind of something that I've never really read a whole lot about, the Japanese internment camps in the US. So I'm interested to read this and I think I've heard good things about this one. This is a fantasy book that I've had on my list for a while that I would really like to get to. The Grave Thief by Dee Han. She is the author of this book obviously, and she actually sent this book to me, and if I remember correctly I believe she also is a homeschooler and she is Canadian, so that checks a lot of boxes for me. So this is a fantasy book, and if you are watching the YouTube video, you can see that the cover is really stunning. I love this. If it will focus. If you are listening to the podcast, then go to the show notes and you can see the cover. So I don't really know anything other than it's a fantasy and the title, and I'm hoping to really love this one. Then a while ago I read a retelling of A Little Princess, and now by the same author I want to read The Tarnished Garden, which is a retelling of The Secret Garden, and they are fantastical retellings. So I don't really know anything about this other than I was totally drawn in by the covers of the two, and I enjoyed the A Little Princess retelling, so I'm hoping to enjoy this one and see where it goes. I have One Crazy Summer on my list. I believe this is, yes, it's set in Oakland, California in 1968. We're following three girls who are in search of their mother who abandoned them. I've never read anything by Rita Williams Garcia, but this book, the copy that I have, has 4 award stickers on it, so I'm thinking it's probably a really good one. If there's a newer edition, it might even have more. Soon there's not even going to be a cover, it's just going to be award stickers. So I'm curious about that one. One I've had on my shelf for a while is Red Scarf Girl. This is a memoir of a cultural revolution by Ji Li Jiang. Not really sure I'm pronouncing that right. So we're set in 1966, and this girl has everything: brains, the admiration of her classmates, and a bright future in communist China. And then things begin to fall apart. So I have also heard good things about this. I think this has really high ratings on Goodreads if I remember correctly, and it's been sitting on my shelf for a while, so I really want to get to it. Then I have heard good things about Lloyd Alexander's series here. The first book is called The Book of Three, The Chronicles of Pryden. I also do own, I think, book 2 or 3 in this series, and it is a fantasy series. I don't really know anything about this book, but I've heard really good things about this series. Another one I've had on my shelf forever and I've heard really good things about is A Wolf Called Wander. This was a cover buy for me. I just really liked the cover illustration and I don't know anything about it. So we are following Swift, a wild wolf cub who lives with his pack in the mountains. When a rival pack attacks, Swift and his family scatter, and Swift sets out on an incredible journey through dense forests, into barren wilderness, and across flowing water. Like I said, I don't really know anything about it, but this author now has one out about whales that has a similar cover, and I really need to read this one to know if I need to read the other one. So hopefully I can get to as many books as possible. And this one's actually blurbed by Catherine Applegate. I've only read one other book by Ellen Hopkins, but I'm hoping to read What About Will. This one may be a closer to the YA age range than middle grade. I'm not exactly sure, but I did enjoy her, now I'm blanking on the title. I think it's called Closer to Nowhere. I enjoyed that one, and so I also want to give this one a try. It is about two brothers, one who has just come home from the Vietnam War, and the other one is a 12-year-old, and I think his brother is obviously struggling after the war, and he's trying to understand his brother, and I think it will be hard-hitting, but also really good. I do believe this one may be a reread for me, but I don't remember it enough, so I wanted to reread it. Oh, I should also say, What About Will is a free verse novel, and so is this one. This, I think, yes. Moo by Sharon Creech. I feel like I like a lot of Sharon Creech's books. Some of them are a little better than others, and this one, we are set in Maine, which is an area that I haven't read a lot of books. I haven't read a lot of books set in Maine, so I'm very curious about it. It really annoys me because I do think I've read this one before, but I don't remember it enough. So either it wasn't that great, or maybe a reread is exactly what I need. So like I like to do in every episode, I just want to take a minute to tell you a little bit about the Intentional Homeschooling membership. It is because of the membership that I have the time and resources to make these podcast episodes available. So thank you to everyone who is in the membership. If you're curious, recently I just shared a library haul sharing all the books that we have out from the library. I share exclusive videos there. We have a mama book club seasonally. I match kids up with pen pals. There's lots of printable resources, unit studies, homeschool vision planner, and I'm adding new stuff each month. And you can get all of that for just $30 for the entire year. And it helps out me in our home, and I think it will be beneficial for you in your homeschool as well. And I will be continuing to add lots of literature-focused resources in the future. So if that sounds interesting to you, I would love to have you come join the membership. A book that I've heard nothing but good things about is Amal Unbound, and it also has a gorgeous cover, beautiful colors, and I'm a sucker whenever there's like a flower on a cover. I'm a sucker for all things floral. So this is 12-year-old Amal's dream is to become a teacher, and she lives in a Pakistani village. So I think it will be really good, and I do believe this author just came out with another book with a similar looking cover, so I don't know if they're in the same series or if it has like the same themes, but I've heard amazing things about this one. Then we've got Song for a Whale. This is about a girl or a boy, I don't know. Our main character is deaf, and somehow my book doesn't really say much for a blurb, it just has praise for it. It says he keeps singing the song and everything in the ocean swims by him like he's not there. He thinks no one understands him. I want to let him know he's wrong about that. So I think it's talking about the whale. I think the whale is a male, but then I think the main character is a girl who is deaf, and this is like their stories coming together of some sort. I'm doing a really bad job explaining it because I don't really know anything, but I've heard high praise for this book. Another floral cover that sucked me in is My Name is Leon. This one is about a boy in foster care, and his younger brother, Jake, is also in care, but Jake is he's lighter skinned, so he is adopted. Well, darker skinned Leon is placed in a foster home, and this is their story. And I think I've kind of put this one off because with fostering, it all felt so heavy sometimes that reading about it can also just be really hard on top of living it. But I feel like I'm finally in a place where I can read about it without it completely breaking me, hopefully. I hope it does break me in some ways, but not in others, if that makes sense. I think this one will be really good. Okay, I have a couple more. One is I asked each of my kids a book that they wanted me to read, and my son wants me to read the second Amari book. I think it's called Amari and the Great Game. Amari is like pretty much it's Harry Potter but different, but we follow a girl who goes to summer camp, but she realizes like there's this whole supernatural world, and so he just read book 1 and book 2 and loved them, so he says I need to read book 2. My daughter, I pulled out a couple books that she has talked about quite a bit that I think I will read because of her, so I'll talk about those in a bit. Here, why don't I pull them out? One is City Spies. So we follow a few kids who are like secret agents, and their names are based off of where they're from. So you have Paris, Sydney, Brooklyn, Rio, Cat, and I think that's it. So I don't really know anything about this series. I think there's 3 books out, and my daughter has really enjoyed them. So I want to actually start this series. And then by the same author, there is Dead City. So this has like there's zombies in here, that's all I know. And like I said before, I've really come to enjoy science fiction in the last couple of years, and so I'm actually very curious about this. It sounds like there's a lot of funny things in this book, and it is a trilogy. So these are 2 books that she's talked about quite a bit that I would like to read so we can have those conversations together. Okay, I think 3 more books here. This one is called The List. This is also a dystopian. It says, how many words do you need to survive? The city of Ark is the last safe place on Earth. To make sure humans are able to survive, everyone in Ark must speak List, a language of only 500 words. Everyone that is except Leda. So I don't know anything about it other than that, but I am very curious. I love seeing how authors create dystopian worlds. Then a series I want to continue is The Missing, is what the series is called. Book 2 is called Scent. This is a science fiction series that has to do with time travel. I'm curious because we're going back into the era of King Edward V, and I'm curious to see if this series will intrigue my kids, because with the time travel it could be interesting to learn about history. I have enjoyed quite a bit of Margaret Peterson Haddox's books in the past, so I feel like there is a good chance I'll enjoy it. I did enjoy book 1, but I think book 2 is kind of going to go into a whole different area. And then the last one that I have here is The Blackbird Girls. It says, in the wreckage of Chernobyl, a friendship is born. And this is a historical fiction that I have heard amazing things about. It's told in alternating perspectives among 3 girls, Valentina and Oksana in 1986 and Rivka in 1941. This story shows that hatred, intolerance, and oppression are no match for the power of true friendship. Yeah, so that sounds really good. And it's blurbed by Patricia Riley Giff, who has been a hit or miss author for me, but they wrote Pictures of Hall's Woods on here, which is a stellar one of her books. I'm pretty sure I just shared that one from the vault in last week's podcast. So that makes me even more optimistic. So there you have it. There is a stack of books I would like to get to in March. I don't think I'll get to all of them. I'm hoping to kind of arrange it in a order of my priorities and then go from there. But a girl can dream, and I would like to dream that I could get to all of these books. If you guys have favorite middle grade books, I would love to hear about them. Maybe I'll get them onto next year's middle grade March list, or I'll get to them throughout the year. Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast episode.